PlayStation just dropped an update everyone's been asking for. Are there more PC ports in store from Sony? Did Sucker Punch just tease us with Ghost of Tsushima 2? And we finally have the release date for the new version of PlayStation Plus, but people are feeling a little iffy on it. So for those of you PlayStation fans out there who are really only tuned into the world of PlayStation and don't really pay attention to what's going on in the Xbox side or the Nintendo side, over at Microsoft, they have somehow lately figured out how to stop the shortage of Xbox Series X's. It's kind of surprising because they also released that special edition Halo version of the Series X. They're also splitting the difference and making Series S's, but you can reliably walk into Targets or Best Buys or wherever right now, and there's a pretty good chance that you'll find an Xbox Series X. So I saw that a lot of people took that to mean that the chip shortage was over for the PlayStation 5 and that we would soon be seeing those on store shelves, but unfortunately I think this shortage is going to continue a little bit longer, mainly due to the fact that the PS5 is just so much more in demand than the Xbox Series X. And I don't want to completely disparage the Xbox for Xbox fans out there. It's doing a good job. It's just like when you compare it to how badly the average person wants a PlayStation 5, the demand is noticeably out of whack. We've heard as recently as the beginning of March from AMD that the chip shortage is nowhere near over and that it's going to continue well into the rest of this year. And AMD, that's important because they're the ones making the Xbox Series X chips and the PlayStation 5 chips, and they're also working on the chips for the Steam Deck, which is crazier when you consider that they're also working on chips for computers and cars. Like, they are making so many different chips for so many different industries. You can kind of see why it's so hard for them to get these things out there into the world right now, because there's just a general shortage. Now, I don't really understand how Microsoft has been able to catch up with Xbox other than what I talked about earlier, which is just the demand is lower for Series X's than PS5s, but still, it's kind of crazy that PS5s are still this in demand a year and a half after they launched. And it really is important for this shortage to end and for more PS5s to get out there, because the longer it lasts, the longer we're going to see cross-gen releases that don't really take advantage completely of the PlayStation 5's capabilities. It's rumored that God of War Ragnarok is going to be the end of these cross-gen releases, and knowing that there's a remake of The Last of Us in the works, I'm glad that that's going to allegedly be PS5 only, because we already essentially have a remake of The Last of Us available on PS4 with The Last of Us Remastered. That game had some pretty solid upgrades, but if they're doing a full-on remake, I want that to be like Demon's Souls, where it's really pushing the PS5 as far as it can be pushed and really showing what Naughty Dog can do with this new graphics technology. The Last of Us Part 2 straddled generations. It got that 60 FPS patch for the PS5 and it looks incredible, but again, I want to see what that engine can do when it's only being utilized on the PS5. But just because Sony is moving on from the PS4, that definitely doesn't mean that other publishers are going to follow suit. We are probably going to get cross-generation releases going into 2023, and I dare say 2024. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully this starts to wind down and wrap up by the end of 2023, or hopefully early 2023. But man, it seems like for a lot of big releases, there's a lot of PS4 logos next to PS5, and that really sucks in my opinion. I understand that it's hard to get a PS5 right now, but I don't think you can really argue against the fact that games are being held back because Sony is continuing to support a console that's pushing 10 years at this point. It's just plain and simple too old of a console to keep supporting. I mean, even leading up to the PS5 launch, I was using my PS4 Pro and my Xbox One X, and I had Jedi Fallen Order at launch. That game was not running well even on the PS4 Pro. The 30 frames per second mode didn't lock at 30 frames per second, and the performance mode didn't get anywhere near 60 FPS, and that was on the Pro models of the consoles. I think it's fair to light the fire under them to stop supporting the PS4 and move on to the PS5, but in the meantime, it looks like it's going to take a while before anyone can reliably get one like we can with the PS4 right now, or the Xbox Series X. Guys, it only took a year, but we finally updated the PS Ready merch store. Of course, there's the classic My DualSense is Tingling design. We also have an Elden Ring inspired shirt that says Maidenless on it. And then finally is the shirt I'm wearing, the PS Ready Doom Eternal crossover shirt, which was a lot better of an idea in my head before Microsoft bought Bethesda and thus made the Doom franchise Xbox exclusive going forward. But Doom is a classic game, it's a classic design, and I think it looks pretty cool on a t-shirt. If you want to pick up any of the designs, they're in the merch shelf. They're also at staypsready.com, and if you use the code STAYREADY at checkout, you'll get 10% off. One area that Sony seems to be happy they're supporting and will continue to support, which is awesome, is the PC. Last last port we got was God of War. It's their best port yet. It looks and runs amazing. I've been playing it on my Steam Deck. It holds 30 frames per second at original settings, and you can even bump it up to high or ultra settings and use FSR, and you'll get 30 frames per second, which makes it look absolutely incredible. Now, the next PC release we're getting is the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection. I'm excited about that, but in the future, I'd really like to see Ghost of Tsushima, and if a leaker is to believe, we won't have to wait too much longer to get it, because Ghost of Tsushima was included in the big Nvidia leak that showed every game coming out over the next few years. Ghost of Tsushima was on there for a tentative release date of February 28th, I want to say, on PC, so it can't be too far off. But this leak is coming from the user Rock Agent over on the PlayStation subreddit. They are apparently very reliable. They've leaked some big stuff in the past that has come true, and that's actually the person who leaked the fact that God of War Ragnarok is going to be the PS4 swan song, which honestly I think is cool, because God of War, a lot of people consider to be the game of the last generation, and after playing through it a lot recently, I think it's kind of hard to disagree. That is a really good game, so to have that close out the generation where it really made its big re-debut on just seems like the right thing to do. But as far as PC ports go, not only is the gap between PlayStation release and PC release going to get shorter, we are allegedly getting ports of all of the biggest games like God of War Ragnarok, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Demon's Souls, Horizon Forbidden West, Gran Turismo 7, Ghost of Tsushima like I already mentioned, and this leak even goes into who's actually working on the ports. So Guerrilla Games is allegedly working on the Forbidden West port, which is great, because I'm just gonna be real, the company that did the port did a terrible job to the point where Guerrilla had to come in and fix it, and the game does run pretty well now. You kind of have to use DLSS if you want to push it over PS4 settings, but you know, they did end up fixing it. I'm just glad they're doing it all in-house this time, because yeah, that last port was terrible. Iron Galaxy is porting Uncharted to PC. I'm kind of curious how much longer that's going to take, because we just got the Legacy of Thieves collection on PS5. I'm assuming that originally these were supposed to come out around the same time, but something must be going wrong with that port. I hope it's not bad. Two studios I'm not too familiar with, Blind Squirrel and Jetpack Interactive, are working on Ratchet & Clank 2016 and Rift Apart. I wonder if those are going to be a pack-in, like a 2-pack, which would be awesome, because I like both of those games a lot, but even if they are individually sold, those are two games I'd really like to have on the Steam Deck. Polyphony Digital is doing the Gran Turismo 7 port, another port that's being done in-house. You like to see that. Polyphony is allegedly working on the Gran Turismo 7 port, and Bluepoint is doing the Demon's Souls port themselves. It's good to get these in-house developers working on their own games and also getting familiar with PC development. I like that. And then finally, the studio that Sony bought just to work on these PC releases, Nixxes, is working on the Ghost of Tsushima's Director's Cut. I don't know what's going on with that one. It's apparently taking a little bit longer than it should have. Nixxes ports are generally pretty solid. They do have a few standouts that weren't that great, so hopefully there's nothing going too critically wrong with this port. I hope it's more in line with God of War than Horizon Zero Dawn. I know some PlayStation fans were upset about these PC ports when they started happening, specifically with Horizon and God of War, but these are ports that are happening well after the games actually come out. And with how good PC parts are right now, even if you have a mid-range PC, you're going to eclipse the performance of the PS4 Pro, and you'll get pretty dang close to the PS5. So while cross-gen PS5 games coming to PS4 are definitely holding back PS5 games, I definitely don't think that's the case with PC. In fact, I'm like 99% positive. I mean, no one's come up from Sony and told me that that's the case, but I would bet a lot of money on it that these ports are not hurting PS5 ports in any way. And also, if you want to play games on PS5, play them on PS5. If you want to play them on PC, you should be able to play them on PC. Sony's not making a handheld right now, which sucks, and the Steam Deck's essentially a portable PS4 Pro, and I love playing PlayStation games on it. I know some people were upset about these PC ports when they started to happen, but they're going to continue and they're doing really well. So I want Sony to keep making money on these games so they make more games, and at least they're not coming to Xbox, right? PC is not hurting PlayStation in any way. This is a very Ghost of Tsushima heavy episode, but speaking of that game, it just got its final patch on PS4 and PS5. Sucker Punch has officially moved on to whatever they're doing next, which I would guess is either this rumored infamous duology or trilogy, I guess, for the PS5, or Ghost of Tsushima 2. That is one of Sony's biggest franchises right now, so it would make a lot of sense for them to continue on with that franchise and make a second game sooner rather than later. When people noticed this was going to be the last patch, they reached out to Sucker Punch and they responded, "While we aren't actively working on any additional patches at the moment, we will continue to monitor feedback on the community-run Ghost of Tsushima Legends subreddit and messages sent to Sucker Punch Productions on Twitter for any high-priority bugs or issues that emerge." I personally think that's pretty cool. The Legends mode itself is pretty buttoned up. There aren't a ton of bugs in it. And as far as bugs go, Ghost of Tsushima's single player mode, whether you're on PS4 or PS5, that works really well too. So while I'm glad they're keeping an eye on it, I think it's time for them to move on and focus on the next thing. They gave this game a ton of support, and I think they have to be commended for it. We got the game, we got the free multiplayer mode, we got free skins for the multiplayer mode, we got the Iki expansion, we got the PS5 port along with that Iki expansion, we got a bunch of extra content added to that game. I think it's time for them to move on and do something new. So while Sony has gotten a little bit of backlash on the new version of PlayStation Plus, it looks like they're still moving ahead with exactly what they planned, because we got the release date of this new service and it's coming sooner than a lot of people thought, on June 13th. So right now we're at the end of April, which means we have about a month and a half before PlayStation Plus switches over and we get this new tiered service that's coming along with PS1, PS2, PSP, and PS3 games. I know that they're allegedly working on the PS3 emulation, which is great, but for now, all of the other games are going to be on your actual console, and then you'll have to stream PS3 games from the cloud. It is cool that they're going to include at launch a big library of games that you can just download straight to your console and play. Hopefully, it's a lot of PS5 games. I know we're getting Spider-Man Miles Morales with it, and also Returnal, and I'm just curious to see how long the wait is going forward between a game launching and then eventually coming to the service. I think it's smart that they're not doing day one releases on this service, because I think that dilutes the games and the quality of them, and if you start making your games free with a subscription service, you've got to make up the money on the back end through microtransactions, more paid DLC, and all that stuff that no one really wants. So it's good, I think at least, that for now it's not going to have games on day one. And if you ask me if they plan on making any games available day one on this service, I would say any of these live service games they're working on, they'll probably make available on the service either day one or sooner after launch than they do with their big single player games, because those games live or die by how big their player base is. So they'll want to have as many people playing these games as possible. The best way to do that is to give it away on your subscription service that people are already paying for, and then have season passes, skins, all the great stuff that comes along with online live service games that people love so much and spend all of their money on. And definitely don't complain about on Twitter, which honestly, rightfully so. There are so many people spending so much money on these microtransaction ridden games that's why we keep seeing them. There's just too much money to be left on the table by these developers, which sucks. When the service launches, I think I'm going to upgrade my account just to see what it's all about, see what games I get with the library. I think Sony needs to announce what the library is sooner rather than later. It's crazy to me that they're expecting people to buy into this day one in just a month and a half, and we only know a few of the games that are going to be included with it. That's wild. On top of that, a lot of people thought Sony screwed up by letting people buy a year of PlayStation Now that will convert over to PlayStation Plus Premium when that service launches, but they know what they're doing. They want people to subscribe to that service. It's like free money for them, right? Like either way, 60 bucks versus what is it, like 120 a year? Yeah, you're getting it half off, but that's 60 bucks you just gave Sony that you might not have otherwise if you looked at the price tag and saw that it was $120 a year. Personally, I think they're charging a little too much for this service. Like, no one really likes streaming games from the cloud. It doesn't really work all that well, especially with PS3 games. The technology is just not there, and Sony has done very little over the years to actually improve it since they launched this service. And on top of that, you can just remote play games from your PS5 over the internet, and that works a whole lot better, and you don't really have to pay for PS Plus Premium to have access to that feature. So while the difference in game scope from the PS4 to the PS5 is leaving a little bit to be desired for a lot of people, one area where Sony has done a really good job is with the next gen version of the PlayStation Phone app. They've been making a ton of changes to the app over the past few months. One big welcome change that people were really asking for was one that allowed all of your screenshots and videos to be instantly uploaded to the cloud. One big change that they recently made that I really like is the ability to make sure that when you take a screenshot or a video on your PlayStation 5, it automatically gets uploaded to the cloud, and then you can just download it to your app on your phone. It was honestly kind of weird how hard it was before to get screenshots off of the PS5 and onto your phone. You basically had to tweet them and then save them and then delete them. I remember I had to do that with Spider-Man Miles Morales. So the fact that now I can get my media captures directly in the phone app is great. And the newest update added in a few more quality of life features that I think are cool. The first and simplest one, and honestly the most underwhelming one, is the fact that you can now use the app in landscape. It looks really good in portrait, but in landscape mode, I'm glad it works now, because it's always weird when you turn your iPhone to the side and then the app doesn't switch along with it. I'm glad that they added in this functionality. The next feature is one I'm really excited about. You can actually personalize the news you see on the homepage, which is sweet because, you know, I'm sick of seeing Fortnite every time I turn on my PS5 and every time I open this app. It really wants me to know what's going on in Fortnite. I do not care about Fortnite. I don't play Fortnite. I've never really played Fortnite. I don't need to see news about Fortnite. So now I can personalize it myself, even though it should have just tracked what games I was actually playing and showed me news from that. Like Steam does a great job of that. When I open up Steam, I see news on Destiny 2, I see news on God of War, I see news on all the games I've been playing over the past month. When I turn on my PS5, I see Fortnite, I see Ark Survival Evolved, I see all of these games like The Forest that I don't play, and I don't know what the issue is there. So knowing now that I can just personalize it myself and say, show me Destiny 2 news, show me news on God of War Ragnarok, show me news on stuff I actually care about, that's awesome. And then this last feature is one that Sony added that's really going to help them out, not really us so much, but if you've ever tried to go on the app and share a link to a game that you just bought that you want your friend to play, you probably noticed before that you really couldn't do it within the new version of the app. Well, now you have the ability to share links to games directly from the app, so you don't have to go into the browser, go to the PlayStation Store, find the game you want to share with your friend, copy the link, paste it into a text window. Now you can just share the game directly from the app. Again, a great quality of life feature that I think Sony, honestly, they've been really good with these quality of life features directly from the beginning, whether you're talking about the phone app or you're talking about the PS5. Honestly, I don't know how much more they can improve this phone app. It's a far cry from what we had on the PS4, and I'm glad they continued working on it because it's honestly better between the two if you compare it to the Xbox app that does the same things. Sorry for the change of scenery on this one, guys. I'm actually out of town, but Sony just announced that we're getting one of the two big features we're still waiting for on the PS5. I've talked about it a few times here on the channel, but basically what variable refresh rate does is if your TV supports it, if you're running at around 60 frames per second and you drop below 60 frames per second, you won't see any screen tearing, and it'll do its best to smooth out frame pacing, so you won't see stuttering either, which is really cool on its own, but it's good that we're getting it on the PlayStation 5 because the Xbox Series X has had it for a really long time. Now, of course, because we're talking about Sony, they can't guarantee every game is going to be able to take advantage of this when it rolls out this week, but they've given us a short list of games that will guaranteed support it, and you can also turn it on globally in the settings for unsupported games. But of course, just like with boost mode, you're not going to see it work in every single game. There's probably just a few where it won't work out, or it might even make the performance worse. But largely, this technology isn't doing anything crazy, so it should work with pretty much every game if I had to guess. But just so you guys know, the supported games right out of the gate are Astro's Playroom, Call of Duty Vanguard, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, Destiny 2, Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, Dirt 5, Godfall, Spider-Man Remastered, Spider-Man Miles Morales, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Resident Evil Village, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, Rainbow Six Siege, and Tribes of Midgard. Unfortunately, I don't see two of my biggest offenders on this list, Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Far Cry 6. I get major screen tearing in both of those games on the PlayStation 5, but thankfully we have that global setting that just turns it on across the board. So I'm crossing my fingers that it works because I know, at least with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, they've had it working on the Xbox Series X for a long time now. So hopefully, just fingers crossed, it works with this global setting turned on. Now, if your TV or monitor don't support variable refresh rate, this isn't really going to do much for you because you need that feature on your TV or monitor to take advantage of it. Luckily, it's becoming more and more of a standard feature, but if you haven't bought a new TV in a few years, you probably won't have it unless you got a really expensive one. Either way, I'm glad Sony kept their word on this one. They said they were working on it last time they updated the firmware on the PlayStation 5, but they gave a very vague range on how long it would take, and it actually hasn't been that long since we got that update. So I think this is a good thing for Sony. This is a good thing if you have a PlayStation 5, and if you have a variable refresh rate TV, definitely try it out with as many games as you can and let me know down in the comments if it's working for you.